when I think about the COTS model, now that we have it, I've gotten that question quite frequently, which is how could we apply this COTS model to other areas? And I think what it did was obviously it's a success example. You now have a historical example of a public-private partnership working in spaceflight development, something that we didn't necessarily have before. So you have sort of the proof to some extent that this can work. And I would say you have to be very careful about applying the COTS model to other areas. Academically, I could come up with a bunch of areas where it would make sense to apply the COTS model. I think satellite servicing is an area that makes sense. Private space station or multiple private space stations. I think academically, when you look at it on paper, you can say, yeah, this is a good area for a public-private partnership. What you also have to appreciate is that it's not just on paper. You have to, with a public-private partnership, we're getting public funds. That brings politics into it. So what becomes important when you think about how to apply the COTS model to something else, you have to form some sort of coalition where you get enough people in enough positions of power that say, yes, we want to do this and we want to come up with some public funds to do this. That's a much more difficult thing than academically identifying what an area that might work. So you have to recognize that that's part of it, right? You have to have a coalition that's strong enough so that you can get the funds that you need and have those funds sort of be to some extent fenced off, because once you get into this, you don't want to back out later on. So you need to get that in place prior to you then going out and doing this public-private partnership. And I found that that's the most difficult part of this. If I could achieve that, we'd have 3 or 4 other public-private partnerships. Finding an area that's a good seed for this, that's easier, right? I've given you 2 already, and I can probably come up with 3 or 4 that might be good for that kind of thing. And it's where you have an alignment of goals, where you have the likelihood of non-government customers. That's a really critical role. You have a criteria. It's a criteria that you need. You have private sector partners that are both financially and technically capable of doing this job. When you bring all those sort of things together, and the government has to have an interest in this as well. So if it's something that just has commercial customers, then private sector should do that, and there should be no incentive or investment on the part of the government. But when you have an alignment of what you want in terms of hardware and the mission, and the NASA or the government wants something and the private sector wants something, but yet they can use that and sell it to other customers, I think then you've really got the chance of making something successful. But the government needs to make sure that they have a coalition so that they can do that. There's lots of demands on public sector funds, lots of demands, and they're all worthy, right? So you need to work that in a way. Obviously, I'm from headquarters, so something I'm very sensitive to. You need to work that in a way that will work here on Capitol Hill and with whatever administration you're dealing with, so that you can bring all those things together and ultimately have a successful public-private partnership. It's really difficult, and a lot of people think it's just a matter of doing the analysis, coming up with a business case. No, it's not just coming up with the right business case and like I say, academically finding the right ingredients for that public-private partnership. You also then need to do the very heavy lifting of getting multiple groups on board with what you're trying to do. And I found that's the more difficult part of any sort of future application of the COTS model.